Welcome to HTO Football, everyone. You're with your hosts, Tom and Andrew, as ever. Andrew, looking forward to today's discussion?
Yeah, I can't wait. I've been a fan of this one for a few years now. I won't say how many years because it'll give off my age, but yeah, I've been a fan right from the start.
Absolutely. Well, we are joined today by Tom Davison from Football Manager. Tom, how are you? Are you well?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all, not at all. I think we've got to kick off with the fact that very soon there will be the new release of the game that people obsess about, that probably destroys marriages, destroys lives, and certainly takes a good few sort of weekend hours anyway. Are you excited for the new release? And it'd be great if you could give listeners a little flavour as to sort of your role in the build up to the release of the new game, and kind of how busy everyone is at Football Manager.
Yeah, I mean, this is by far and away our busiest part of the year. We've got the game coming out on November 24th, which will be Football Manager 2021, which, we were only just getting over FM20, and we were really busy over the last few months with that anyway. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to sort of get out between now and then. In terms of my role, I'm PR manager for Sports Interactive, so my day-to-day job is basically dealing with the media, which at this time of year, is pretty intense when people want to find out what's going on with the game, like when they're going to get their hands on it, what sort of stuff's going to be in the game and things like that. So, we're very excited to show what's going to be in the game this year. That's coming in the next few weeks, but yeah, it's a really busy time, and I know it's obviously busy for us on like the communication side of things, but on the development team, it's just crazy how dedicated they are to making the game as good as it can be every year.
Absolutely. Is it always a sense that, it can't be as big as last year, or it can't be as much to do, and then yet every year it just sort of goes again and it's a monster? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the whole process sort of, it really begins as soon as the game is out each year. So, we get one game out the door, and then we start straight away on the next one. And it starts like really planning, what stuff's actually going to make it into the game, because we have a database of about 3,000 features already. So that's without any extra ones coming in. And then you have to whittle that down to something manageable that people can work on and that we can talk about over the course of the release of the game. So that process starts like from day one of the previous year's game being out the window. And then that really like ramps up as we get into, January, February time. And then stuff starts to really like get decided, and then stuff starts to get worked on then. And the way it works is that people work on like their features individually. So we've got different gameplay teams. So you might have we've got the match team, who handle everything you see when you're playing a game in FM. You've got like the database team who are making sure that player transfers and everything are up to date. And all these different groups work on their own features individually, and then it sort of comes together about like August time is when we start to like push it all into one place, and that's when we really it starts to feel real at that point. Everything's sort of in place, and we can start like honing it and polishing it to make it sure.
Absolutely. So you'd also be pleased when the football, when transfer windows is closed and settled, because otherwise everyone's changing everything every second.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one this year with it being like an extra month onto the window, because obviously it means that the database team are sort of still unsure as to like when they can properly sign everything off, because we like to obviously have all the players at their clubs that they're going to play the season at, but then we also like to give maybe 6 or 7 games to see how that player's fitting into the team. So we can see should we rate them like this, or have they underperformed, so we should be rating them like this. So that balancing act, I think, will be happening over the next few weeks. So yeah, it's always difficult for those guys around transfer window. It's going to be different this year because they're usually quite relaxed by the time the game actually is released. It might be a little bit closer to the wire this year for those guys, but I'm sure they'll hit it.
Not to delve too much into obviously COVID, Tom, but what sort of impact has that had in the process of the release of this game and the making of it?
It has definitely had an impact. I mean, we're quite lucky. Quite a few of the team worked from home anyway, before, as permanent off-siters before COVID hit. But it's definitely had an impact. I mean, we've had to basically have the whole studio equipped to work from home. And I think we've done a great job of it. The IT team have sorted everyone out with all the equipment they need. So it's been a pretty seamless transition from being in the office, all the time, to then working from home. But it has an impact. We've had to sort of bring in new processes and sort of really make sure that people can communicate effectively, because the way it works in the office is it's all very informal, like face to face, little like 15-minute meetings where you give like progress updates and that sort of thing. So we've obviously had to transition that over to like Zoom and team calls. So yeah, that's been I think a lot of work has gone into that from like the senior management team. But I think when people come to play the game, they'll notice that, to them, it will seem like business as usual. And that's a phrase we've sort of used in the office quite a bit, or used in the team quite a bit, is this period is business as usual. And I think what I've been really pleased by and impressed with is the focus hasn't necessarily been on like the work side of things, because there's a trust that people have been doing it for so long that they can do it whether they're at their desk or whether they're at home. But it's been more on like supporting people with like their mental health and making sure that they've got everything they need, because a lot of them obviously at home with young families. So that for me has been really pleasing, that there's been that support there, and it hasn't just been about we've got to get the game out at all costs. It's been make sure that you're comfortable.
You mentioned the team there, obviously at FM. Over the years, Tom, since harking back to before you, I guess, were a fan of the game before you joined, how has the team evolved as well? Has it become a lot bigger? Is there a huge range now of different areas that people work on? I can imagine back in the Championship Manager days, it was like a couple of people sat at a desk trying to fix out the 2D pitch or something. But has that grown exponentially with the rise of the game?
Yeah, massively, absolutely massively. Like you mentioned about the Championship Manager days. Yeah, I mean, when I think back in like the late 90s, when they just moved into like their first proper office, there were 6 people, or maybe 6, and then it grew to 12 in the first year, and then now we're just over 200, which is crazy. Yeah, and we've actually hired around, I think it's 21 members of staff during like the lockdown period, which is fantastic. Yeah, and yeah, you're right about different areas as well. Like there's so many new areas, and particularly on like the mobile game has become really popular now. I mean, it always was, but it's like over the last few years, it seems to be as smartphones have got better and people are more aware like how they can play games on a smartphone. That just seems to be on the rise. So that team has expanded. We've got like more platforms than ever. Like this year, we're coming to Xbox for the first time in, I think it's 13 years. So we've got people we've hired to work on that side of things as well. So it's ever changing. And like when I joined 8 years ago, and we'd just passed, I think, the 100 mark. And that was like a massive milestone. Yeah. But this is the rate of growth in the last few years has been crazy.
It's so a bit of an opportunity for a sales pitch. Then you mentioned the mobile. If you could, for the listeners, just say how many platforms you're on, and do you know how many users there are globally? Then how many players there were last year, that kind of thing? Because I'm sure it'd be some astonishing figures.
Yeah. So last year we had. Last year was a bit skewed because we actually made the game free on the PC game, free for 2 weeks on Steam, and then recently, last month, we made it free to own on a platform called Epic. So a lot of people took advantage of those two periods, and so it's a little bit skewed for last year. Generally, we have just over 2 million players worldwide across all of the different platforms. So we've got Football Manager, which is the main PC and Mac game, which is the one that I think everyone grew up with, and was Championship Manager back in the day, and it's evolved into what it is now. So that's still our like most popular mode of playing the game each year. And then we have Football Manager Touch, which it started out actually as a mode within main FM, as a lighter way, a quicker way to get through the seasons. But in recent years, we've expanded that out onto things like, so it's on tablets on Android, iOS, and then it's got on the Nintendo Switch as well. And then we're obviously releasing the Xbox edition, which is sort of, it's a specific edition of the game, but it's tailored for the Xbox controller. So, nice. We've had to sort of, most people play the game on PC and Mac keyboards. So we've had to sort of revolutionize the way we work with the user interface. So when you're playing the game, it doesn't feel clunky when you're moving from menu to menu, or you're trying to click from screen to screen. So that's been worked on a lot. And then we've got the mobile game, which is available on pretty much any smartphone in the world. And yeah, that's a little bit more accessible, I think, than the other two, because it's just like, it's quicker and it's punchier, and you mainly deal with the stuff that really matters. So transfers, tactics, and match day itself. You don't deal with like the media so much. You don't deal necessarily with like players' agents and that kind of thing, which has been a nightmare for me on the main game in the past few years, because I just can't. Every time a star player comes to me with like, I want a new contract, boss, I just cave straight away. I've got no.
Lucky you're not in PR as your actual job,
Yeah. For me, it has to be the desktop version. Like, there's nothing. I know with the handheld device, there's that convenience, isn't there? And you can be on a train, you can be on a bus, you can be walking down the road and be playing the game, which is what FM want, I guess. But that you can't be a 3 a.m. sitting in front of your computer in the dining room somewhere, like trying to chase down the playoffs away at Yeovil. You cannot. You're not going to replicate that, are you? Like, it's just. You mentioned earlier about the team as well, like growing. I just thought about, it's almost like as if there's a correlation there between modern day management as well. So, like, there used to be, you'd have the kit man and the water boy and the manager, and then now you've got all these like, Pep's entourage. Like you see all these all or nothing documentaries where there's a role for everyone. I watched the Borussia Dortmund one a few weeks back as well, and there's a job for literally everyone, and that's why I feel like with the desktop version, I just love that control that you can oversee everything, even though really that's not how it works, because Pep doesn't do everything at Man City. But there is that addiction, isn't there, where those checklists come up on jobs and roles, and I just have to like tick them all for myself. It's just
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that control element is what keeps people coming back, because as football fans, we're so out of control anyway. Like we don't have any say in what the team does on the pitch, or like who they bring in and anything like that. And you just think the amount of times, like, I think all football fans have sat there and gone, we've signed this player, he's not done well, and there's our rivals have picked up this guy who is a fraction of the price, has hit the ground running, like, you just want to get in there and take control. And the game definitely allows you to do that. And I think, you're right about how there's so many more elements involved in like that structure now with your backroom team in the game. And it's interesting, like different people will have completely different ways of using them. Like, I think I'm more similar to you. Like, I'll try and take more like a hands-on approach to like everything. But then it's interesting when we watch people play the game, and they'll be like, okay, I don't do training at all. I just let my assistant do that. And some of them don't even like have a say in transfer. Yeah, exactly. Like, they've never seen at the training ground. They'll just turn up on a match day. But some people like hand over all of the transfer responsibility to their like director of football for like a more realistic experience. But then you're like, well, he could sign anyone. Absolutely anyone.
I'm not a first team head coach, guys. Do you know what I mean?
So it's interesting for sure. Like, and I think I watched the Man City documentary, and like the amount of like people in that dressing room now who aren't directly involved necessarily with the players, but are like giving Pep information and like feeding him like analysis and stuff. I think it's great how the game's growing like that, but you do wonder like where the cutoff is.
Well, quite. We were fortunate enough to have Gary Loon and Colin Loon, so the ex-Arsenal and England physiotherapists, join us on HTO Football. And Gary actually said that's how kind of his career started. He was like the backup goalkeeper, and then he just sort of doing odds and bits. And actually then, 20 years later, his career is sort of one of the most established physiotherapists in the game. But essentially, look, it's a handful of people there just all pitching in, rather than those individual roles, scope, specialised. But it's where football's going. But, I guess it's obviously where Football Manager's gone as well, and to show that level of detail. So are you, so you kind of hinted it there, but are you a player who will have, the gameplay on 45 minutes a half, you'll have every little thing ticked towards your responsibility, or are you a bit more hands off in your playing?
Cup of tea at half time.
Yeah.
I have done. I remember when I was at uni, we had like an online game going, me and my flatmates, and we got one of us wasn't doing very well, but two of us were like fighting it out for the title. And we were managing in France, and it was when PSG had just been taken over. And the squad was dead money, but the squad was sort of like in transition from being, mid-table to then what they are now. And so I took over PSG. My flatmate took over as Leon, and we were going for the title on the final day. And we sat there, and we had to we had the whole thing separate rooms. Couldn't come in and spy on what we were doing tactically. Couldn't watch the game together. So we had 45-minute halves set up, and we had a little Facebook chat on the go, and just dropping in chat and banter in there about how the game was going. So that was.
Did you win?
I didn't. It was gutted. It was absolutely gutted. I lost 2-1, but we were absolutely battered them, and I don't understand how we lost it. And Solomon Kalou was my star player that year as well, which says it all really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I definitely have in the past gone full in. I think as we all get older, we've got less time on our hands, and it's great that the game lets you. That's one thing we've really focused on, is giving you the chance to customize the game to what you want out of it. So you can, if you've got all the time in the world, you can definitely go all in and analyze and scrutinize every little detail. But if you want to hand that over to your assistant, or hand stuff over to maybe your coaches or your scouts, then you can do that. So I'm probably now more a mix. I tend to really focus on certain areas, so scouting, transfers, that kind of thing. Obviously all the stuff around the match and the prep for match day. Tend to sort of set the training schedules I want, but then just let the assistant run the session, because I'm not fussed about too much about whether they're doing one-on-ones or creating chances in the final third or whatever. So definitely focus more on those key areas and just try and make those as good as possible. But I didn't win any trophies on FM20. I had a save with I'm a Forest fan, which I think is realistic that we didn't win anything, because we've not won anything for about 20 years. But yeah, it was horrible, just sitting in mid-table for 5 seasons.
Yeah, you mentioned that, you say the word realistic there, and I think the reason the game is just so successful is because there is that incredible realism when you're playing it, that you're sitting in a pub with your mates, and you've just come off the back of 3 straight wins on FM. You've gone out to the pub, and you're it's to the extent where you get so gassed that you think I'm going to start contacting Premier League clubs, because there's that famous quote from the In-Betweeners, isn't there, from Jay, taking Woke into the Champions League or something in 6 seasons. But why that's so funny, I think, is because there's something in us that we kind of see what he's saying, because when you're playing FIFA or Pro Evo, or there isn't that, you don't get that realistic feeling from it, do you?
And it'd be interesting to know, and I appreciate it's not in your day job, and it's not, but maybe in your role remit, therefore. But that element of actually, you see the rise of esports, and I look at something like a motorsport, and you look at how the Formula One teams are starting to they use them often as their test drivers or their simulator drivers, and that kind of thing. They're esport drivers, and I wonder, there's been instances where now football is going to that for its scouting network to FIFA into Football Manager, and could you see a place where Football Manager and FIFA therefore become ever more important to the real game live, and how often does FM get used for its data?
Yeah, definitely can see it happening more. We do get used. Our data does get used by clubs, both here in the UK and internationally, and it tends to be. There's so much data in the game that we can, pretty much give them an overview of any sort of area of a player they want to look at. And it varies by club to club. I can't talk about which clubs, because there's really strict confidentiality agreements in place. But yeah, we do, and we used to have to go out and we'd have informal conversations with clubs and with the boards or managers of clubs, and we would talk about the database and how many players there were, because it's easier now to understand what a player in a certain league is doing, or to add scouts in a certain area of the world. But we have, the average football club, top flight football club, will have about 20 scouts worldwide, and we've got 1,000, and they're just fans of the game who are really passionate about making sure that their nation or their club or their league is as accurate as possible in the game.
Yeah.
So they'll go and do the scouting for us, and they're really passionate about it. They're really, really knowledgeable, they're dedicated fans, and a lot of them go on to work in football. So like we've had people go and work mainly on like the analysis side of things. So they will go and work as like performance analysts or data analysts at a club. But some of them go into like scouting. Some of them go and work their way up to become like the top scouts at their club. Or there's a couple who've gone into like director of football positions. One guy in Serbia is actually a manager now, which is crazy. So it's definitely our influence in the game has grown massively. I mean, when I came in, that was one of our first targets, was to become more ingrained in football, which I think we've achieved quite a lot. And then I think with the esports side of things, that's grown massively. I think over lockdown we saw like just how much like sports and organizations were using gaming to
absolutely
sort of bring that flavor of like real entertainment back to the fans who are missing out. And we've seen a little bit of that. I mean, Football Manager's it's not set up really at the moment to be an esports game,
No.
not in the way that FIFA is. But I mean, that's not to say it doesn't happen. Like there's a community, the FM community, like the streamers and YouTubers, they put on a thing called the Streamer Showdown every couple of weeks or at least once a month. And that's getting like massive views on YouTube. And they actually have like a Soccer Saturday style program where they're watching like all of the 6 people taking part, and like it's cool. It's brilliant. It's really like high production value. So that's like obviously going to be growing, when the new game comes out as well. Some clubs actually appoint like official FM players, which is quite interesting. Like
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, like I think it'd be like a bit of an ideal job, wouldn't it, if you're a fan of that club and then you're just like, do you want to come and like just be the official FM guy? Yeah, okay, fine, yeah. So be interesting to see if like more clubs take that up as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what are the challenges for Football Manager, Tom? Because you're kind of out on your own, really. You've got to play games like LMA, and I remember you used to play Premier Manager back in the day, but there's just nothing on that level at all. So what is the challenge? Just to not get complacent?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for us is to like make the game even better each year, because we have been doing it for some time. Like this will be our 26th game, I think, that the studio has released. So yeah, and it is a yearly title. So trying to find those extra improvements on top of what's already there is a challenge, but it's what gets us going as well. It's what brings us together. Finding like creative ways to make the game that little bit better. And also we're helped out because football's always changing. So we had VAR go into the game a couple of years ago, and we've had to sort of like work on that as the game, as VAR
as the game works out.
Well. Yeah. So those new technologies and new systems of doing things are changing, and like you say, like even the way we model the backroom team, like we've added so many new like roles, like we were saying earlier, like just the amount of people who are now involved in that dressing room, and it's just trying to keep pace with it. And we're lucky that we have such good contacts in the game that who can flag up to us, okay, this isn't how we do things, or this is we don't tend to hold a meeting before a game on this day, or that kind of thing. So it's little snippets we can get like that we can really like build out into something bigger. And our studio director Miles Jacobson, he's great at that, at finding the detail and then expanding on it into like this big picture idea. So he's still like directly hands-on with all of the features that go into the game. Like they're almost like his children, because he's so like involved in that process that he's completely although he's got this huge business that he's overseeing, he still really wants to be focusing on directing the game as well. So I think that really helps us out to have like someone who's had that experience and has that creativity that we can just go to and like just throw ideas at and then see what we can do with them.
So talking of ideas then, before we put you on the spot with a bit of a challenge, I did want to ask you talk about improving the game every year, and I do appreciate that things will be under lock and key, but is there any sort of new features or updates for the coming release that you can tease listeners about?
I'll talk about specific features, but what I can do is, so what we've said when we've announced the game is that you'll have more control than ever as a manager, and you'll have more tools at your disposal than ever to get the best out. Yeah, more. I know, even more. And it's when you'll see when the features are announced that like everything works a lot more across the whole game now. So that certain things that were in place in like one area are now brought out into a lot of other areas of the game. And yeah, I mean, I think that people will be really, really surprised with like just how detailed and how much control you do have now.
That's nice little tease there for what's ahead of them, which is great.
I'm also looking forward to these. I'm looking forward to all the social media announcements because if they're anything like Arsenal's ones, they're going to be a treat.
Well, that's another world of it as well. Absolutely. But we did say we're going to put you on the spot, didn't we, Andrew?
Yeah, got our counter-attack feature on HTO Football, Tom. So shortest possible answers would be fantastic. Yeah,
so we're just going to throw some quick fire. Quick choice questions at you and put you on the spot, and we'll see. We'll go from there. We'll probably take it in turns. But do you want to kick us off, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. So had to kick off with this one. Best Football Manager signing ever under Tom Davidson's reign.
New gen called Malcolm Hay. He was 5'2", but he bossed midfield like nobody's business.
Nice. Therefore, biggest Football Manager achievement, biggest win you had, biggest success as a manager.
Having a stadium named after me.
Oh, nice.
Favorite FM formation?
Oh, good question. Currently 4-2-3-1, but of all time 3-5-2.
Nice.
Slightly away from the game, but also maybe on the game. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi, greatest of all time.
Good man.
So it's cup final day on FM, Tom. Is it a tracksuit or is it a suit?
Suit every time. With a little buttonhole as well, flower in the buttonhole.
Professional. Wembley day out, if it was. You're a Nottingham Forest fan. You know, them to win the Champions League in real life or England to win the World Cup?
Oof. That's a good one. I'll be unselfish. England to win the World Cup.
Nice.
Okay. And last but not least, obviously, FM is your favourite game, so we'll put that to the side. So second place, what's your favourite football game of all time?
Good question. Either PES 5 with, I think it was Terry and Henry on the cover facing each other, or FIFA 96. That's the first one I ever had. And like the commentary now looks so terrible. I remember the time being like blown away by it.
Was that the one that had the indoor? The indoor.
I think that was 97 was indoor. I love
97 had the indoor one.
Oh, that was immense.
I love that indoor game, man.
It's incredible, isn't it? 96.
Something for FM22 there, Tom.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you what, I'll log a feature for it.
Indoor, literally behind closed doors or indoor.
Well, with COVID, I mean, I think we may have just announced, Andrew and I have just stumbled upon FM's big new feature, the indoor arena. No,
HTO manager there, we'll have to coin that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coming for your job.
Yeah. It's been an absolute pleasure, Tom. Thanks for your time.
No problem at all, guys. Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate it. Best of luck with the release.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.
Thank you very much.
Big thank you there to Tom Davidson for dropping by at HTO. Football Manager 21 is just days away now, so keep an eye on that for the release. And another big thank you to Leyton Orient fan Shivam Pathak, who becomes our 150th YouTube subscriber. You can check out his weekly work at The Zone London on Twitter. Thanks for listening today, guys, and take care.